Welcome to Beyond Rockets. Hope you're having a great day. My name is Clark Dunn and I'm your host. Get ready to enjoy some awesome conversations from Huntsville locals about cool work they are doing right here in the Rocket City. You can connect with us on social media at Beyond Rockets, and if you're interested in doing a podcast yourself, I'd love to hear from you. You can visit my website, beyondrockets.com today, or connect with me on LinkedIn at Clark Dunn. Sit back and enjoy this episode of Beyond Rockets. This episode is sponsored by Yellowhammer Brewing. Yellowhammer is a local craft brewery serving Huntsville for the past 14 years. They are known for their premium craft beers like their T-Minus and Rebellion, but what you might not know is they also offer spirits, wine, seltzers, and non-alcoholic drinks. Next time you stop by their location, try one of their seasonal cocktails made with the Gemini Bourbon or the Yellowhammer Vodka, or try this year's big hit Pineapple Punch Seltzer. You can find out more information about Yellowhammer Brewery by visiting their website, yellowhammerbrewery.com, or visiting their tap room located at Campus 805. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. Would you like to introduce yourself and we'll kind of get started?
I'm Melissa Thompson. I am so honored to serve as the CEO and president of the Community Foundation of Greater Huntsville.
Awesome. And so before we kind of dive in and talk about the Community Foundation, the work you do there, talk a little bit about your journey to get here to Huntsville. I know you're not originally from here.
I'm not. So many, right?
Yeah. Almost everybody that I talk to is a transplant. They've come here from somewhere else. Talk a little bit about where you're originally from and kind of your journey to get here.
Well, I'm one of those kind of odd people who traveled a lot as a child. My family moved a lot, and not for military purposes. There were a lot of different reasons. I was born in Michigan, lived in Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, and when I got married, I moved to Arizona. So when I was in Arizona, I went to law school at Arizona State. I'm a proud Sun Devil, but that pathway was a great background for the work I get to do today. In 2004, our family moved to Alabama for my husband's job. He works with the Department of the Army. And so our son was 5 years old and starting kindergarten. So I took a little bit of a pause in my own career to just kind of jump in every possible way in his education and school setting, room mom, PTA president, all of the different volunteer roles that so many serve. But that really kind of created relationships and opportunities that led me to the Community Foundation. So in 2011, I was actually attending a school board meeting when Jenny Robinson came up to me and said, "Hey, there's a position open at the Community Foundation. Would you be interested?" And it was the perfect time for our family, for me to jump right back in. And so I started as a part-time employee. Lynn Berry hired me. Lynn was the first executive director at the Community Foundation. And I just served in lots of different roles along the way. And 2019, I became CEO. And so just love what I get to do. I work with amazing people, whether it's the team at the Community Foundation that serves day in and day out, or the donors and the nonprofit organizations that we serve along the way. Just the most amazing people. I always tell people I have the very best job in the world because I'm helping people be generous. And when they're generous, they are truly at their best.
Yeah. And so take me back to 2004 when you get that, hey, your husband gets a job here, you're moving to Huntsville. What did you know about Huntsville? Did you know anything? Did you have any preconceived, like, this is what North Alabama, this is what Huntsville's like?
No, I mean, in fact, probably like so many, probably some of the impressions might have had a little negative connotation about like Alabama. I don't know that I see myself living in Alabama, but we came to Huntsville and I just remember my husband saying, "Give it a minute. Huntsville's just different." And I was like, I don't know about this, but it really was. And such an incredibly welcoming community. And I think one of the distinctives of Huntsville is so many of us are not from here. And so Huntsville has just got open arms to welcome newcomers. And I think that's one of our hallmarks. I think that's what makes us really special is we are open to new ideas, to new people, to new families, and we embrace the new. And so I think that's what's so awesome about our community. A friend of mine once said, I wasn't born in Huntsville, but I got here as soon as I could. And so I love that kind of sentiment because I think those of us who found Huntsville can't imagine living anywhere else.
Yeah. And it's interesting that even in 2004, you kind of saw what Huntsville maybe has become. Like,
oh my goodness,
you could see that it was going to be something amazing and great and
Absolutely.
Incredible. And obviously it's probably blown your expectations out of the water. But it is interesting that even then you can kind of see that hidden gem of the South. It kind of is.
It absolutely is. And it's just so unique. I mean, you just think of all of the true rocket scientists that are serving our country through their work at Redstone Arsenal. I mean, what an amazing commitment to education and innovation. And you could see it, back then. Obviously, it goes back to the space race and just kind of some of those early seeds that made our community great. But I think it was those seeds of innovation and collaboration that just continue to blossom and bloom. And so I think it really is what makes Huntsville such an amazing place, is we got really, really smart people putting their skills to work in really, really smart ways. And so it really is the gem of the South. And I think it's no longer a best kept secret. It is quite readily apparent. And so I love to host family and friends who come to Huntsville and they're like, this is actually a really great
This
community.
is not what I expected.
Correct. And so I'm always, like recruiting people like, well, you too can find work in Huntsville
100%.
because it's such an amazing place.
Yeah, and it's incredible because it's continuing to blow people out of the water. You continue to kind of see, it's hard to even imagine from growing up here. I mean, I'm born and raised here, to see it like in high school versus now, and it's like it's not slowing down. It's continuing to grow like crazy. In 2011, you said you took kind of that first role at the Community Foundation. What did the Community Foundation look like in 2011?
Oh, we were still so young. I mean, we were formed in 2008. It was a group of community leaders who came together and said, other communities have a community foundation. We need this too. And so folks like Chris Russell and Sarah Savage, Margaret Goldsmith, Jenny Robinson, Lynn Berry, Bob Ludwig, just some community leaders who saw what the community foundations could do in other areas, and they're like, we need one here. So interestingly enough, and talking about how innovative Huntsville is, Huntsville was the largest major city in Alabama to have a community foundation. We were 13th out of, at the time, 13. And so there have been a few other smaller community foundations formed since then. So we were kind of late to the game in that area. But, those leaders really saw this vision of what we could become. And so in 2011, really, it was a pivotal year for the foundation. Dynetics did their first ESOP deal, followed by Torch Technologies, who did another ESOP. And so we went from having about $1 million of assets under management in 2010 to, at the end of 2011, having, I think, close to $4 million of assets under management. So,
and probably a pretty small team too at that time.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, we were all part-time. There was not a full-time employee.
Wow.
And so, but that was such a launching point for us, because now all of a sudden we had more funds and more donors that we started working with. And so it's just continued to sort of snowball since then, just as more folks learn about the Community Foundation and the role that we can play with donors. They're like, oh, that seems like a great option for us. And so we know we're in such a position of trust in this community. And, so we are very aware that our integrity as an organization, the trust that we have with our donors and with our community, we guard that with our lives, because if we ever lose the trust of our community, we will truly be out of business. And so, we don't take it lightly when someone trusts us to help them with their generosity. And so it's just continued to grow since then. And so, back in 2011, we were managing like $4 million of assets. Right now we're managing $70 million. And so it's just continued to grow. But, even more impressive than that, I think, is just the amount of money we've been able to raise for charitable causes. And we are pushing $150 million that has been raised for charitable causes. But even more importantly, we have distributed grants that are quickly approaching $100 million, which is $100 million of money that's come through the Community Foundation out to do really, really important work in the community. And, we've talked about how great of a community Huntsville is. Well, our donors see it too. And so about 70% of all of our dollars that are granted out stay right here in the greater Huntsville area. And so it really is becoming this engine to do good in our community. And we're just honored to be part of our donors' generosity plans.
Yeah. And so in 2011, I know now, it's not just the Huntsville area that you really serve. In 2011, was it even when it first got started, was it really kind of centralized to Huntsville? And when did you kind of get to that point where you realized there was a need to support nonprofits and organizations outside of the Huntsville area?
That's a great question. So when we were organized, we have the Community Foundation of Huntsville, Madison County. And so we we really centralized all of our work for Huntsville and Madison County. In 2017, we made the shift. So we became the Community Foundation of Greater Huntsville. So we not only changed our name, but we really kind of, first of all, indirectly changed our geographic footprint. We followed later with actually formalizing that. So our geographic footprint is Huntsville, Madison County, Jackson, Limestone, Morgan, and Marshall counties as well. So it's basically Madison County and the adjacent Alabama counties.
Wow.
And so we saw the need that not only were our donors living in all of those 5 counties, but they were supporting work in all of the 5 counties. And we were the most logical choice to be able to serve those counties well. And so that's, we're continuing to grow into our footprint and, do more in the counties other than Madison County. But, I often say trust takes time. And so you can't just show up and put a new name on your organization and all of a sudden be effective. You've got to build relationships. We are in the relationship business. And so, we've got to build relationships outside of our Huntsville office. And so we work really hard to try to open our arms and to be, serving donors and the nonprofits in the full geographic footprint that we're called to serve.
And so take me back to right before you become the CEO and president. What was that? Because you've kind of worked your way up throughout the Community Foundation at different roles. You get to this point in 2019 that you're like, okay, this opportunity might be here.
Correct.
Was that something when you started in 2011, did you know you wanted to do that? Or at what point
idea.
along the journey did you think maybe being the CEO, or did you not know until it became?
It really was kind of when it became. It wasn't like I had my eyes on, the price. I was just doing what I was doing at each step of the journey and just trying to do the best I could without, looking to the next step to say, oh, my aspiration is bigger. I just wanted to serve the organization wherever I was needed at the time. And so before I became CEO, I was the COO. So I was doing all the operational things. And so really when I transitioned to CEO, it opened up some new opportunities for me to work more with donors. And it was a part of my job I hadn't really had as much.
Yeah.
And it's the part of the job I love the most, where just being able to sit down with a donor, figure out what he or she wants to do with their generosity and really make that happen. And so one of my team members we'll be in meetings together. Sometimes she goes, I see Melissa's wheels turning, because I love thinking about what the donors are telling me and then what we can do to help make it a reality. I just find so much joy in that. It's like a puzzle to be solved. And I just think to customize solutions for our donors just gives me so much fulfillment. And I think it really makes our donors' generosity journeys that much more fulfilling when they've got a plan that's unique to them. And so it's what we love to do.
Yeah. And so, as Huntsville, since becoming CEO, Huntsville's kind of been just on this upward trajectory. It is, we talked about it even prior to that, Huntsville had grown a ton, but 2019 on has been crazy.
It has.
How has the Community Foundation, or how does the Community Foundation connect itself with new people, new transplants coming here to Huntsville, new companies coming here to Huntsville to get your message, what you're doing in front of them? Because I feel like that's kind of the, as they see that Huntsville's a good spot for them, for their business, it is also showcasing to them hey, here's some people that are also a part of the community that help us be successful. How do you position yourself at the table with them?
Well, I think, it all comes back to relationships. And so it's, some of your listeners may remember the commercials back in the 70s where it's like old Wella Blossom. They tell a friend and they tell a friend and they tell a friend. And so I think, whenever we really work on cultivating relationships, you never know where that relationship will take you. So a good example of this was when Mazda Toyota came to town. They came in with, it was a huge economic development deal for our region. And so, they were really focused on, staffing up this incredible workforce and building a really amazing product on their 2 lines. And so when Jessica Luther became their external affairs director or the lead for that, she was tasked with not only kind of messaging across, all of this different work, but she was also charged with how do we become a good corporate citizen and really getting that message out. And so it was a huge undertaking. And so she turned to us and said, Melissa, I need some help. What would it look like if the community foundation was part of this equation. And how do we put this together? And so, I really tried to listen, like, what are you trying to accomplish and that sort of thing. And so I said, Jessica, give me a couple of days and we'll take a look at this. And so I just really kind of socialized it with the team to be like, what could it look like if we took on more of the responsibilities? And I kind of came back to her a couple of days later and said, here are a couple of options. And she said, I knew you'd have this. I'm like, no, we made this up for you. And so, her team decided on, what level of support they needed and this sort of thing. And since that time, Mazda Toyota has granted out almost $1 million from their fund, but it started with a relationship. I had a relationship with Jessica from when she had worked in the nonprofit world. And so then whenever the time came for her to be in a different position, she was able to say, okay, who do I know who can help me with this? And so that's when she thought of us. And I think, that partnership has just been very synergistic through the years because it's morphed to what they've needed at the time.
Yeah.
But again, I think everything begins and ends with relationships. And so as new folks come to town, I love meeting new people and just like telling them about what we do, because it's like, you might not need us now, but you just need to know we're out here and what we're doing. And so when the time is right, I just believe that, like, if you push people too fast, it's not going to work out well for anybody. But if you just are patient and it really is relationship based, when the time is right, things will come back around. And so that's where we've tried to be, is just invest in the relationships and the people along the way. And so really kind of back to your question too, in 2019, some of that growth has really caused us to be introspective, to say, what is our unique role in the community? And where we've landed is we are uniquely situated to help donors on their generosity journeys, to help mobilize their generosity by simplifying their giving and amplifying their impact. And so once we really discovered that's who we were able to own that and say, it's not that there's not a lot of additional work to happen or that we could do, but it's like, what are we uniquely situated to do? And so for us to find that really deep why do we exist? We exist to help donors mobilize their generosity. It's become a filter for the things that we don't do. And so not that it's not important work, but we just can't do all things. And so I think that was one of the challenges. By the time we got to 2019, we were starting to get more traction. And so people were turning to us to say, hey, can you help solve this problem? But so the challenge for us was not every problem needs to be solved by us. And so knowing, who we were was critical for us in kind of that journey.
Yeah. I mean, I think in any business, building those relationships is everything. Because I think there's plenty of conversations I have, plenty of work I've done that has taken years to like actually become a thing. But then you start working with them and it's been 3 years since you've worked with them. Mm-hmm. And you're working with them every day, all the time. And it's like, it's an incredible job. It's an incredible position. But you just like, the timing is everything. And I think too, it's realizing, and it's a hard thing to realize, but like, why am I doing this? Right. What am I doing? And what do I love to do?
Right.
And then once you figure out those things, like you said, it's outside of the scope. It doesn't fit the mission, doesn't fit the vision. But there's other organizations that do that.
Correct.
And so then now with the relationships you built, you can now then direct people, hey, that's not really under our wheelhouse, but this organization does a great job at that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, that kind of segues for me. In 2020 was a pivotal year for us. I mean, obviously the COVID pandemic hit everyone and it just changed the way we think about so many different things. And so in March 13th of 2020 was the first case of COVID was diagnosed in the state of Alabama. And so I remember my family was supposed to be going on vacation the next day. We canceled our vacation. And it caused me to spend some time thinking over the weekend about, okay, what does this mean for our community foundation, what we need to be, how we need to show up for our community. And so, we had some glimpses of how other communities were starting to respond to this. And so Monday morning, we just huddled up as a team and said, okay, what does this mean? Who do we need to be over the next few weeks? So we quickly decided, there were going to be ways that our community needed us to show up. The nonprofits needed us to show up, and our donors needed to be given an avenue to direct support. So that Monday, we sent out an email to our entire donor, our database, and said two things. We said, number one, nonprofits, you try to anticipate what you're going to need based on what you're seeing. And we're going to limit it, though, to areas of health and wellness and basic needs. There's a lot of things that are going to be impacted, but these are the areas we're going to really focus on. Then we also said at the same time, donors, if you want to support, we want you to come alongside us in this effort. We know there's going to be a lot of needs. Will you help support? So we sent that out into the ether and, kind of like wishing, good wishes. And so a couple weeks later, we looked and we had like $7,000 of funding and we had $70,000 of requests. So I was like, oh, we might have gotten ahead of our skis a little bit, but we wanted to show up for our community because we believed our community would show up for the needs whenever they were presented. So we convened a grants committee of 12 different 12 different community leaders to evaluate the grants that had been submitted. And so they did. And they went through and they said, we're going to treat these as though we've got the money and we're going to vet these and see what we would feel comfortable endorsing. So they came back and said, we've got about $35,000 of requests that we can endorse. Like we can put our stamp of approval, our name behind it, like this. These are good grants. So they deployed the first $7,000. And then I went out to our donors the next day, to those who have funds with us. And I said, here are the needs, here the gap. Will you help? And so immediately we built up a webpage overnight to say, here are the grant applications. It was a private page for our donors. Our staff worked overtime to just make this a reality. And so the next day I sent notes out to our donors and said, here's the needs, here's the opportunities, will you help? And so several responded right away. And this was a Friday. And that next Monday, I got to the office and the first call I took, it's like 8:03 a.m. One of our donors called and said, Melissa, my wife and I saw your email and we want to help. And we're not going to pick and choose among the nonprofits, but you can. And so we're going to send you a gift of $100,000 to get started. And I walked out of my office with tears in my eyes and just told our team, I said, I cannot believe how much trust and confidence our community has in our organization to be part of this solution. And so our grants committee met 13 times over the next several months.
Wow.
We ended up deploying over $900,000 to support organizations in our community because success follows success. And it's always hard to find those pioneers who will take the lead on things, like those donors who gave us the $100,000 gift. But then subsequently, so many other donors came in and responded because they heard what we were doing and they heard how quickly we were deploying the funds. And so that's really where this whole idea of mobilizing generosity came from. It was out of that experience where people just stepped in and wanted to be part of a solution, but they looked to the community foundation to be their partner in that. And so since then, we've just that's where we found our way to say, this is how we need to show up for our community, is working with amazing donors to mobilize their generosity to improve the quality of life in our community. So that's what we've been trying to do since.
Yeah. And so from your perspective, do you think that since that moment, that's really the launching point?
It was.
For where we are today?
There is no question.
Wow.
Because in 2020, we did our first kind of like new strategic plan where we identified our mission as mobilizing generosity, because our board members who were on that task force that was really looking at the plan, they're like, what do we do when we do when we're at our best? And it was like, our emergency relief fund, it's that. How do you capture that? And so we started, working with different words, and we're like, mobilize. That's what we did. And I think that term connects in this town that has such a strong military presence, because when you mobilize, you're garnering resources to move in a fixed direction. You're intentional. And I think that's what we're doing with generosity, is taking the resources that we've been given and mobilizing it in a forward direction.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, like a lot of the audience is probably in that young professional range that listen to this. And so it's interesting to me because I think as someone in that demographic too, how do you, when you're talking to people about generosity, you're talking about people that are kind of in my boat. How do you push them to see that, hey, this is possible for you? How do you kind of, because I mean, there is, like, I'm part of Give 256, which is an amazing organization.
Yes.
shameless plug, definitely join it. But how do you, because I mean, I think about these organizations in town that do incredible work that you get to help support, you get to help direct funds there, you get to help further their mission. And you kind of see this sort of window of opportunity where the younger generation is now kind of stepping in. How do you kind of get in front of them, and what message would you have for them to say, hey, here's how you get started?
And I think that's such a great point, Clark, because generosity doesn't really have just one price tag. Really, it's a mindset where you say, how can I be part of a solution? Whether it's through your volunteer time or whether it's through your financial resources. But Give 256 is such a perfect example. So that was started when Amy and Caitlin Rourke came in. They said, hey, look, we may not have the same level of resources as our parents, Bill and Brenda Rourke. And they said, but we can do something. And what does that look like? And so they launched Give 256, where it's basically for $256, you can change your community for good. And so, and again, just kind of variations of that. So it's like it could be as little as $25.60 a month that you can be part of a solution. And so I love that model where folks are pulling their money, $256 a year. I mean, it's really less than a cup of coffee, a week, to be able to be part of a solution for your community. And as you know, the various Give 256 members will come together and get to decide, all have an equal vote in where that money goes. And they've done some amazing projects over the years. And, you can drive by and see the PAR trailer out, in the community doing good. And you're like, we did that. Or building beds for Sleep in Heavenly Peace, or Hatch training, or whatever, and say, we did that. And so I think everyone wants to be part of something that's bigger than themselves, and Give 256 is such a perfect opportunity to do that. And so we're always looking for ways to engage all generations in philanthropy. It may be that some of our donors, they've got the money to set up their own fund and create their own generosity pathway, but not everybody has to be in that same situation. And so we're doing something right now. It's a family philanthropy opportunity. And so basically, we had 61 different nonprofits submit 1-minute videos, just 60 seconds, to tell about the impact that they're making in the community. And we had a grants committee that down selected to 12, which was an incredibly difficult task to do. And so we have these videos posted on our website right now, givehsv.org/family-philanthropy. And so people can look at these videos and choose to donate any amount. It could be $5, it could be $10, to causes that have been vetted to say, I love what this organization is doing. And all of these organizations are small nonprofits with budgets of less than $500,000. So they're doing really, really good work, but maybe don't have the name recognition or the visibility that others do, but doing amazing things. And so people can jump in. And we've actually created a family philanthropy toolkit where parents can sit down with their kids and say, what's important to you? What's important to our family? Make some decisions together as a family on these giving opportunities. And we've actually got some matching funds that are going to come in and supplement that. And so it's a way to amplify this family philanthropy. And so, I mean, it's something, I try to practice what I preach. And so my own family went through, watched the videos, talked about them as a family, made some decisions on where we wanted to put some money. And so it was great for me to hear my adult son talk about what was important to him and why certain organizations connected with him better or more than others. And so I just think philanthropy gives families such a great way to talk about values, talk about things that are important to them, and to really kind of give you a glimpse into your kids and what's important to them. And I think obviously, I'm a huge generosity fan. I think generosity is truly like a superpower. But I think it's a vehicle for families to have really important conversations.
And so as this episode's going to come out before the end of the year, and kind of move as we're wrapping up 2025, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
What, from the Community Foundation's perspective, are you looking forward to the most as the year winds down? And then what can people maybe expect going into 2026?
Well, that's a great question. So there's some things that are happening this year that really have been off the radar for a lot of folks. The One Big Beautiful Bill that was passed this summer actually has some provisions that affect generosity and charitable giving. And so a lot of folks have not been tracking some of that. So there's some changes that are coming in 26 that will limit the amount of the amount of deduction you can get for your charitable giving. And so we're trying to talk a lot to donors about what that means and, some planning that they might want to talk to their advisors to accelerate some of their giving this year. So we think that 2025 is actually going to be a really busy year in the charitable giving space as people try to capture the full benefit of their tax giving this year. But then into next year, we think that there's just a lot of nonprofits who have been affected with some federal funding cuts or some different things where if donors are uncertain about certain things, government shutdowns, it affects the way that they give. And so that's affected a lot of nonprofit organizations who are serving our community well. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that, a lot of need that's being expressed in the community. And there's so many places for donors to jump in and be part of that solution. And so for the Community Foundation, we think that we're a great option for donors. So sometimes donors are looking to do charitable things, but they may not know exactly where they want to give. And so we have a donor advised fund opportunity for them where they can give now, lock in their charitable deduction, and then decide later. So in many ways, they're buying time. And so we think a lot of donors may be coming our way this winter, as we approach fourth quarter, to really think through, like, what could that look for them? How can they maximize their charitable deductions now? And so we're looking forward to those conversations. And year end, December is always crazy busy for us because, like, for example, last year we raised about $25 million during the year, and about 25% of that comes in December. So we are really lots of gifts come in, lots of grants go out.
Well, everyone's schedule winds down. Your schedule ramps up.
Yeah. So a lot of people are like, oh, are you guys doing on any vacations for the holidays? I'm like, you don't understand. Community Foundation world, we're here for our donors.
Maybe like February, but
maybe that's about right.
December, absolutely not.
Correct. That is absolutely correct. So we're, juggling, trying to give people a little time with their families, but also knowing we have to show up for our donors. And so December 31st is always like just a crazy busy day.
It's knocking on the door. It'll be here before we know
literally. And people will come in that same day and be like, hey, I was thinking I need to set up a fund today. I'm like, we're here.
Yeah.
We're ready to go.
You don't have to wait till the 31st.
Correct.
You can come in a little earlier.
Wait,
so if you're listening and you think this might be something for you, you should definitely reach out. And if people want to reach out and connect, where's the best place for them to do that?
Just go to our website, givehsv.org. Just kind of see what we've got available. All of our contact information is right there. Or they can just read giving@givehsv.org, and we will reach back out to you and schedule, even if it's a phone call or a Zoom meeting, or obviously always available to have an in-person meeting. Sometimes our donors just like that. They'll show up at our front door, like, make sure we're a legitimate organization, and we are, and we welcome those visits. And so, just reach out to us, and we're happy to help you along the way.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to have everything in the episode notes with links to everything. So if you want to visit it, find out more information, you can definitely visit it there. But I appreciate you taking the last little bit to talk about your journey and kind of the impact the Community Foundation is having. We'll probably have to have you on in a couple of years just to talk again about how it's changed, because Huntsville's landscape's changing. The impact you're having is changing, and it's incredible to be a part of. So I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We think we work with the most amazing people, and so we're always wanting to expand our Community Foundation family. So if anyone's interested in being part of something that's really making a difference in our community, just reach out to us, and we'd love to have you part of the family.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Clark.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Beyond Rockets. Don't forget you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, and on YouTube at Beyond Rockets. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Beyond Rockets to stay up to date with new episodes as they are released. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.